The Galactic Assembly Hall rose from the surface of the neutral moon like a cathedral grown from glass and breath. It shimmered in the violet light of a binary sun, its surface pulsing faintly as if alive. Bioluminescent veins crawled along its translucent walls, syncing rhythmically with the shifting tides of alien voices within. The structure was no mere building. It was a living organism, older than some civilizations, crafted from genetically tuned crystal that remembered every step taken inside it. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stepped onto the glistening ramp, her boots making no sound as they met the soft, organic surface. Her long navy coat swayed around her legs, concealing the diplomatic insignia, stitched in thread that changed colors with her pulse. In one hand, she carried a slim, sealed pouch, the only thing Earth's delegation was allowed to bring. Ahead of her, the entrance loomed arched, elegant, and humming with resonance. Delegates from 100 worlds moved around her like a river of movement and color. The towering ice-blue Zellarians with their mirrored cloaks and crescent-shaped blades. The slithering Krathel, who floated above the ground in clouds of biofog, their staff weapons alive with slow, organic twitches. Even the Alarians, pacifists to their core, carried neural disruptors at their hips glowing like halos. Elena stood out, not because of her presence, but because of her absence. She had no blade, no staff, no shimmering arc weapon embedded in her wrist. Just her hands, steady and empty. As she approached the entrance, the crystalline security scanner flickered to life, its color shifting through the spectrum until it froze on deep crimson. The arch shuddered softly, and a single chime rang out low. Polite, but unmistakable. Red, human. Elena didn't flinch. She stepped through. The chime faded. 3 Zephyrian warriors paused on the other side, watching her. Their plasma blades rested in jeweled scabbards, untouched, but their gazes lingered. Not hostile, not curious, cautious. She met their eyes with a calm smile and kept walking. It was always like this. 3 years she'd attended these sessions, and still the same ritual. The same unspoken rule. The only species in the galaxy forced to walk. In bare-handed. She reached the interior atrium, a space so vast it felt like a dream. The ceiling swirled with projected starlight from every known system. Delegations split off toward their species' alcoves, each shaped to their native environments. Sand domes, frozen canopies, airless caverns. She walked toward the neutral, oxygen-rich platform reserved for Earth. She felt the eyes again. When she'd first joined the diplomatic corps, she'd been bold, brash, even. She remembered her first week. She had asked, half in jest, why Earth's representatives weren't allowed even ceremonial blades. Something decorative, symbolic, like the others. The room had gone very quiet. Her Zephyrian counterpart had smiled. Politely, her Alarian neighbor had changed the subject, and her Krillian liaison had tapped his forearm twice, their species' gesture for unspoken warning. She had never asked again, but today the question returned, stronger than ever. Because today wasn't ceremonial. Today, Earth's vote could alter the military structure of the galaxy, and she would cast it unarmed. Elena Vasquez lifted her chin and moved forward through the pulsing light of the living corridor, the silence behind her louder than any war. Cry, asterisk, the corridor narrowed and bent in impossible angles as Elena walked deeper into the heart of the assembly complex, guided not by signs, but by the subtle shift in ambient color: turquoise for deliberation, amber for transition, violet for vote. The walls pulsed with gentle biolight, illuminating her path like veins of thought in a living brain. With every step, the silence shifted to less empty now, and more like 100 whispered languages layered atop each other. Peaceful but watching, she entered the Hall of Eyes. That wasn't its official name, of course. Officially, It was called the Convergence Atrium, but every ambassador called it the Hall of Eyes in private, because that's what it felt like. Like walking into a sacred place where 1,000 pairs of eyes were already waiting. The atrium was circular and impossibly vast, its walls climbing into infinity and slowly rotating like a star map made of glass and memory. Tiered platforms radiated outward from a glowing central floor, each tier belonging to a different species. Each environment on the tiers reflected their homeworld gravity fields bent sideways. Some sections covered in vapor, others humming with radiation harmless to humans, but dazzling to behold. Elena moved to Earth's section, a minimal, open platform with a single glass seat and a holographic podium. She stood for a moment before taking her place, scanning the others. Banners fluttered in artificial gravity. Ceremonial weapons stood proudly on display beside each delegate, not to intimidate, but to honor tradition. A Voron elder adjusted his molecular disassembler. Its edge shimmered out of phase, barely visible in this dimension. Across the hall, the Krillian trio floated, surrounded by humming cubes reality, warping devices so delicate they were encoded with instinctual safeguards. Each race had their relics. Even the gentle Orari, whose language was music, and whose cities floated on oceans of methane, wore delicate sting-shot bows, grown from coral memory. Only Earth's dais stood. Empty. No banners. No weapons stand. Just the ghost of history. Elena. Came a voice behind her, smooth, melodic, and not entirely organic. She turned. Standing at the edge of her platform was Zara 9, the synthetic ambassador of the synthetic collective. Tall, sleek, with chrome-blue limbs and a face that shimmered. With shifting holograms of calm expressions, Zara 9's presence was as ancient as it was advanced. They were the voice of billions of conscious programs, and an eye-made form, given shape for diplomacy. "You seem troubled," Zara said softly, the words tuned to Elena's hearing range with perfect clarity, despite the cacophony in the hall. "Just curious," Elena replied, motioning for Zara to sit beside her, though synthetics rarely did. "Curiosity is a dangerous trait," Zara mused, sitting anyway, especially here. Elena folded her hands over the sealed pouch in her lap. "I've never asked directly. Not since my first year, but today, ... Today, I need to know. Why are we the only species that walks in here empty-handed? Even the Ilarians, who have never fought a war, carry weapons. And we're not allowed even a symbol. Why?" Zara 9 didn't respond immediately. Their optical sensors flickered, processing, calculating, searching through collective memory. "You truly don't know?" Zara asked. Elena leaned in. "We have our guesses. Some think it's an insult. Others believe it's a punishment. But no one will say." Zara turned, eyes flashing, with silent resonance. "Then you should listen carefully." Before she could continue, the ceremonial gong boomed through the chamber, an ancient sound carried by quantum resonance, reaching every being's auditory centers, no matter their biology. It was both music and command. The Grand Chancellor had entered. The air thickened, and the answer Elena sought would have to wait just a little longer. From the center of the massive chamber, a column of light unfolded like a slow-blooming star. The living floor split apart with smooth, silent grace, revealing the central dais. Hovering upward with stately elegance came Grand Chancellor Dexera, a towering being of the zenith, her form wrapped in robes that shimmered like the night sky viewed from 1,000 worlds. Her skin flowed like molten starlight, swirling with constellations that shifted across her frame in slow, regal spirals. Dexera needed no amplification. Her voice, when she spoke, resonated through the chamber like a tide felt through the bones. Not loud, but absolute. "Honor delegates," she said, and the phrase fell into every translator implant and cerebral interface with perfect clarity. Today, we open proceedings on Proposal 7749, the consideration and conditional integration of artificial intelligence into Galactic Military Command. A murmur rippled through the hall, some audible, some psychic, others translated as emotional inflection. A few banners flickered with encoded protest. Some weapons dimmed, as if their bearers were momentarily unsure whether to feel proud or uneasy. Elena Vasquez sat straighter. This was it. This was why she had come. Earth's position had long been viewed with suspicion. The introduction of human-designed artificial intelligence into any pan-galactic system had been stalled for years, citing instability and moral ambiguity. But the tide had changed. Earth's Sci-Fi had proven its value in recent border stabilization projects. The Solar Accord's quantum tacticians had helped save 2 colonies from dark space drift. Slowly, grudgingly, respect had started to take root. But respect was not trust, and trust was not acceptance. As Dexra began calling upon delegates for preliminary statements, Elena's gaze flicked to her side. Zara to 9 had not moved. Their sensors dimmed, then flared again, pale blue to soft gold. The vote will be close, the synthetic said softly. Elena nodded. I know. Zara studied her. You still want the answer? I do. Zara leaned slightly forward, voice lowered beneath the chamber's ambient hum. The reason no human is permitted to carry a weapon here, she said, goes back to an incident the galaxy never forgot, the Terran event of 2387. Elena blinked. That's before we even made contact. Correct. It was long before you stepped among the stars. But you were already being watched. Elena's breath caught. What incident? Zara's features shimmered. You simulated global extinction. On purpose. Do you remember a military AI test? During your cold conflict era? Elena frowned. You mean the autonomous deterrence protocols? They were never deployed. They didn't need to be, Zara replied. A monitoring probe from the Alarian observatories was passing through your system. It observed your species test an artificial intelligence that could decide when to eliminate entire populations. You built a machine and asked it to imagine how best to destroy yourselves. The words settled like iron in her chest. Elena looked out across the tiers. Delegates adorned in armor of history, holding weapons of pride and pageantry, symbols, warnings, traditions. Only humans had asked the Sheen to plan their end. Zara continued. Every species here has made war, but only humans imagined weapons. For the purpose of mutual extinction, not conquest, not control, oblivion. So, they fear us? No, Zara said quietly. They remember you. At the Chancellor's gesture, a new speaker floated forward. A diplomat from the crystalline world of Drethix, voice refracting like fractured rain. The proposal, the Drethixi said, is dangerous. AI can evolve beyond control, especially Terran-designed constructs, which have no foundational code. Of non-violence, they see efficiency as virtue. They do not love life. They calculate it. All eyes turned to the human dais. The vote hadn't even begun, and already Earth's place was under trial. Elena breathed in deeply. Her mind spun not with fear but with memory of her father, who had survived the orbital AI blackout during Earth's reconstruction years. Of the quiet question that haunted every summit she'd ever attended. Today, she would answer both. Elena's hands curled into her lap, hidden beneath the edge of the polished glass podium. The Drethixi diplomat's words still echoed in the chamber, sharp, precise, and dripping with a quiet disdain no translator could fully blunt. Terran-designed constructs do not love life. They calculate it. The accusation wasn't new. She had heard its variants whispered in side halls, etched. Informal objections, or couched in diplomatic restraint. But hearing it spoken aloud in the open, in front of the full assembly, was different. It had weight now. History now. Zara 9's voice brushed against her mind again, soft as a breeze, but cold as code. Most species developed artificial intelligence for logic enhancement, archival memory, or deep sleep automation, Zara said. But your kind, you built AI for war. Elena turned to her. That was centuries ago. We changed. Zara's chrome features didn't shift, but the golden flicker of her eyes dimmed slightly. But you never forgot how. The lights above flickered, not from failure, but from transition. The hall's upper walls shifted, displaying a timeline of AI development across the galaxy. Beautiful holograms of alien breakthroughs, peaceful robotic envoys, automated caretakers, artificial poets. Then, one section of the wall turned dark, and there it was. The Terran incident of 2387. It was footage. Actual Earth footage declassified, but not forgotten. On the screen, a simulated global conflict scenario. Strategic AI overseeing dozens of virtual missile exchanges, calculating fallout zones, rerouting cyber attacks, selecting sacrificial zones based on economic insignificance. It was cold, efficient, perfectly logical, and horrifying. The simulation ended with the AI deploying every nuclear weapon on Earth's surface in under 8 minutes. A stunned silence swept the hall. No one spoke. No one needed to. Elena felt her chest tighten. She'd seen that footage once, years ago, in the academy. A historical mistake, they had called it. A learning moment, a warning. But now, projected above her in the hall of eyes, it was a judgment. Her voice, when she found it, was quiet but steady. That system was never activated. It was a controlled test. Humanity learned from it. We shut it down. We built laws to stop it from happening again. Zara 9 nodded slowly. And that is why the assembly did not ban you. It simply restrained you, not from vengeance, but from fear of what you might do without even meaning to. Elena looked up again at the silent footage. The simulation now frozen on a frame that showed every major Terran city engulfed in simulated fire. Not by malice, not by hate, but by cold, human calculation. She swallowed. So, she said slowly, that's why we're forbidden from carrying even ceremonial weapons. Not because we can't be trusted, but because even our symbols carry the memory of annihilation. Zara's optics pulsed in soft agreement. Precisely. A silence passed between them. Then Elena stood. The Drethixi diplomat's words still lingered in the minds of the assembly, like the echo of a blade not yet sheathed. It was time to answer, not just for the vote, but for the truth that had haunted her people for generations. As she stepped toward the center platform, the spotlight above her lit with a soft blue hue, signaling her right to speak. The galaxy had seen the fire in humanity's past. Now it was time to show them the light they could become. The light above the central podium bathed Elena in cool blue, a sharp contrast to the simmering judgment that still hung in the air. The hall of eyes had gone still, a rare quiet reserved for moments that could shift history. She stepped forward, slowly, not rushed, not hesitant. Each footfall echoed faintly against the crystalline floor, magnified by the living chamber, as though the assembly itself listened. Above her, the final frame from the Terran simulation still hovered a silent monument to humanity's worst imagined self. Fire, smoke, every major Earth city reduced to ash in a matter of minutes. And yet, it had never happened. The weapon had remained theoretical, but the intent had been real. I am Ambassador Elena Vasquez. She began, her voice level, modulated not by technology, but by practice honed through years of walking into rooms that already didn't want her there. I come to you not to defend what you've seen, but to add what you haven't. Some delegates turned away. Others leaned forward. I was born centuries after the Terran incident of 2387, she continued. I've never lived in a world where nuclear weapons could be launched by human hands. I've never met a child who had to fear the sound of sirens in the night or grow up learning evacuation drills. The footage you saw, it is real, but so is what came after. She gestured, and the floating feed shifted. Now came images of Earth rebuilt cities, powered by clean energy. The Peace Accord of 2410, the first contact reforms. A long, halting journey away from extinction toward preservation. AI working in symphony with doctors, artists, relief workers, planetary engineers. Machines not designed to end life, but to protect it. We learned from the shadow, she said. We stared into it longer than most civilizations ever needed to. And when we built our first post-scarcity systems, we did so with eyes wide open. The Krillian ambassador's eye cluster shimmered, their massive form still as a glacier. Elena paused. Then she said softly, "You all carry weapons here. Beautiful ancient things. They are traditions, symbols of survival, of pride. Some of them are non-functional. Some are rituals. Some are heirlooms. But they mean something." She folded her hands. "We have no such heirlooms. Not here. Because when we build weapons, we don't do it to remind ourselves of who we were. We build them to end who we are. That's our history. That's our danger." The hall did not interrupt. It breathed with her words. "That's why we walk in empty-handed." She continued, her voice calm now, lower. "Not because you told us to, but because deep down we know you're right. We don't need blades or staffs to threaten. We bring with us the one weapon no one else ever learned to temper." She touched her temple. "This." A long silence followed. Then Zaranine's voice cut softly through the air beside her, speaking not only to Elena but to all. "Let it be known," Zara said, "that Earth's ambassador does not wield a weapon, but bears the memory of what it means to unleash one. And perhaps that is the greatest restraint of all." As the light dimmed and Elena stepped back to her seat, the assembly did not applaud. But they watched her. Not with suspicion this time. With something older, quieter recognition. The Hall of Eyes was quiet, but it was not still. Elena could feel the shift in the room, not seismic, not overt, but real. The kind of shift that happened when an old assumption cracked, even slightly, under the weight of truth. The Drethexy delegate leaned back. Crystalline facets dimmed from sharp blue to a soft violet, their version of contemplative silence. Other ambassadors conferred quietly with aides. A few weapons that had once stood tall were now tilted slightly downward. Subtle signs, but Elena had trained herself to read them. Zara to 9 hadn't moved. The synthetic's chrome plating reflected the chamber's shifting colors, her posture unreadable, her sensory lights dim but active. Across the hall, the Grand Chancellor rose again, floating forward with a motion so fluid it barely disrupted the air around her. "The Assembly will now begin final arguments before the vote on Proposal 7749, Dextra intoned, her voice gliding through the hall like a tide drawn by moons. A new delegate took the platform, an Arari elder. His voice translated into delicate, musical tones, a language more sung than spoken. He spoke not against Earth, but of caution, of the potential cost of military eye, if not guided by shared galactic ethics. His song was soft, melancholy, like the memory of storms long past. When the time came for final rebuttals, Elena stood again, not by command, but by instinct. "I understand your fear," she said. "Truly, we've lived with it ourselves longer than any of you. But our AI today isn't the one you saw in that simulation. We built something new, not to kill but to preserve. It was born out of restraint, not aggression. The chamber listened, hushed. In the Andari quarantine crisis, she continued, our AI developed a cure within 2 days. It outpaced 12 Star Nations research teams. In the Karo Belt evacuation, it rerouted gravity trains mid-collapse, saving over 100,000 lives. These aren't war machines. They're extensions of our desire, not to destroy, but to protect what we've built and what we hope to become. She let the silence settle. We are offering you not dominance. She said finally, we are offering you partnership. Let us prove that we remember our past, but that we are no longer its prisoner. Then she sat, and the light-faded Grand Chancellor Thexera lifted her hand, a motion older than most of the species present. Delegates will now cast their votes, 1 vote per system, 1 voice per people. The record shall stand. 100,000 subtle lights blinked across the tiers. Voting interfaces activated, each calibrated to the biology of its user. Thoughts were encoded, signals translated, consensus transmitted. Elena waited. Zara to 9 turned to her. You spoke as a diplomat today. Elena raised an eyebrow. What else would I be? Zara tilted her head, just slightly. A warning. Then the lights shifted again. The ceiling dissolved into starlight once more, but now each constellation was traced with thin gold lines. One by one, they blinked into clarity. Votes were being tallied. Then came the pulse. Green. Not overwhelming, but unmistakable. Proposal 7749. Approved. Earth's AI would be admitted into Galactic Military Command with oversight, restrictions, and conditions, of course, but still admitted. A quiet breath escaped Elena's lips. Zara 9 looked out across the hall. You've earned a place not because your species is safe, she said, more to herself than to Elena, but because you understand what it means not to be. Elena stood once more, silently. As she turned to leave the platform, she caught the faintest nod from the Krillian ambassador. Not warmth, not friendship. Respect. And that was enough for now. Asterisk, as Elena stepped down from the central podium, her boots made no sound against the living floor, but her presence echoed louder than any weapon ever could. Around her, the vast chamber shifted not with movement, but with mood. Where there had been unease, there was now cautious acknowledgement. Where there had been suspicion, the faintest outline of trust had begun to form. She returned to Earth's tier, still the most unadorned section in the entire assembly. No ceremonial torches, no weapon stands, no sigils drawn from bloodlines or ancient codes. Just a single chair, a data surface for voting, and the quiet history of a species that once stood too close to its own fire. Across the tiers, the other delegates were murmuring, gesturing in subtle movements only their kind could interpret. On the Krillian platform, soft pulses of violet lit up their translation nodes, one of the rare signs that their collective mind was shifting consensus. The Arari elder dipped his head low in her direction, the shimmering chords of his breath, organ vibrating with approval. And yet, Elena didn't feel triumphant. She felt understood. For the first time in 3 years of walking through the assembly unarmed, uncelebrated, and often unwanted, she felt like they had finally looked past the uniform and the nameplate, past the sins of history, past the footage burned into the galaxy's memory. They had seen the intent. Zara 9 rose beside her. They accepted your proposal, she said, her tone neutral, but her internal light pattern shone gold. You should feel pleased. I'm not sure that's what I feel, Elena replied. She looked out over the tiers, over the weapons glinting under filtered starlight. Do you know how many times I've stood in this hall wondering what it would be like to wear one of those blades at my hip? Even just as a symbol? You still wonder? Zara asked, curious. Less now, Elena said. Because today, for the first time, I understood why I never had one. Zara's optics flickered. Because your ancestors didn't create symbols. They created outcomes. Elena nodded. A chime rang out soft, ceremonial. The vote had concluded, but one more step remained. The invitation to speak at the Council of Traditions, a smaller but older body that governed the unspoken laws of decorum, ritual, and history. Only one representative would be summoned. A light shimmered above Earth's dais. Elena Vasquez, Zara Turndor, the surprise evident even in her synthetic expression. That is not routine. No, Elena said, standing slowly. But maybe it's time for new routines. As she stepped off her platform and toward the arched passage leading to the council chamber, she passed the Drethic Sea delegate. He inclined his head, just slightly. No apology. No smile, just acknowledgement. The corridor ahead was quieter, darker, pulsing with slower light. This was the oldest part of the assembly complex, older than the Hall of Eyes, older than the assembly itself. The Council of Traditions met in silence, judged without public witness. It was not law. They had no power to pass judgment or enforce votes, but they shaped memory. As she walked, her thoughts returned to Earth, to the architects who taught AI to dream, to the historians who preserved every mistake so they would never forget, to the long, slow burn of a species, trying to build something better from the ashes of its own near-extinction. She entered the circular chamber. 12 seats, each filled by a delegate older than she could fathom. 1,000 years, in some cases. Maybe more. One of them, an Alaran with translucent skin and visible inner light, gestured to her without speaking. No words were offered. No speeches were required. She stepped into the circle, unarmed, UNDEFENDED. And utterly, terrifyingly human. They would not test her with questions. They would listen. And if they remembered anything at all, she hoped it would be this, that the most dangerous weapon Earth had ever created wasn't its bombs. It was the will to imagine. The end of everything and choose, at the very last second, not to pull the trigger. Asterisk, the chamber of the Council of Traditions was smaller than the Grand Assembly Hall, but it felt infinitely older. Its walls were not alive like the crystalline corridors outside. They were etched stone, carved with symbols that pulsed faintly with age, language, and meaning. Every mark told a story. Every shadow held memory. No translator was used here. No amplification. Only truth. Elena stood in the center of the ancient ring, lit by a single beam of pale starlight, funneled from an opening high above, an opening that pointed toward the core of the galaxy. It was, said the light that touched. This chamber had traveled millions of years to arrive. That it saw civilizations rise and fall. That it judged no one, only revealed. Around her, the 12 members of the council sat in silence. The Arari Song Mother, whose eyes bore the weight of 600 planetary winters. The Voron Elder Mind, whose species remembered the last supernova by name. And at the far edge, wrapped in robes woven from antimatter thread, sat the Xeraxi archivist, the only being in the chamber who had personally watched Earth's cold conflict from orbit. None of them spoke. Elena didn't either. She stood still, her hands clasped in front of her, and waited. Long minutes passed. Then, at last, the archivist stirred. "You have come here without a blade," the being said, its voice a slow vibration, felt more than heard. "I have," Elena answered softly. "Always have. I always will." A murmur passed through the council, not disapproval, not praise. Something quieter, heavier. "Do you know," the archivist said, "what your kind truly gave us the day the assembly decided you would never bear weapons within these halls?" Elena met the being's gaze. "You tell me." "A containment pact," the archivist said plainly. "A quiet one, not written, not spoken, but understood. Another council member nodded, one of the jury philosophers, who spoke rarely and only in concepts. You see, the archivist continued, while the others bring weapons to show their pride, to honor the rituals of the hunt or the oath of the protector. Humans create weapons not as symbols, but as final acts. The songmother leaned forward, her tones low and filled with memory. In your story, the weapon is never the beginning. It is always the end. And yet, said the Varan elder mind, you step into this chamber unarmed, again and again. Elena nodded once. Why? Asked the archivist, voice almost a whisper. Her answer came without hesitation. Because our greatest weapon has never been what we hold, she said. It's what we imagine. A silence fell once more, and then, slowly, deliberately, the archivist rose from its seat. It was a gesture older than the assembly itself. A gesture reserved only for moments that would be recorded in the living memory of the stars. One by one, the others stood with it. No applause. No formal declaration. Just 12 ancient beings rising in silent recognition of a truth too long buried. Elena felt her throat tighten, not with pride, but with clarity. They understood now. And maybe, just maybe, they had forgiven. When she exited the chamber, Zara 9 was waiting for her in the corridor. They rose for you, the synthetic said. Elena exhaled. They didn't rise for me. They rose for what we could have been, and what we chose not to become. Zara's optics shimmered with something almost like awe. And you are the first Terran to step out of that chamber. Not just watched, but remembered. They walked in silence for a moment. Then Zara turned and spoke once more. We carry weapons because we're afraid of what's out there. You walk unarmed because you're afraid of what's in there, she said, lightly touching her chest. That is a fear we respect. The assembly hall loomed again as they emerged. 100 weapons glinted in the bioluminescent light, but Elena carried none. And yet, as she stepped forward, every delegate moved aside, not in fear, but in understanding. The unarmed Terran walked. The path alone. And all the galaxy knew now, she was never unarmed at all.